Hi there, I'm Lily. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and this is my podcast where I chat about my knitting, designing, yarn now, my own yarn, things I've been working on, general thoughts on knitting and a community, bit of all that sort of stuff. So hello if you're new. I always forget to say all these sort of YouTubey things like please subscribe and all that, but we all know how it works, so whatever, I'll just get on with it. But yeah, so as I briefly mentioned there, I have a new yarn out, which my previous video is a rather lengthy video chatting all about it and getting a little bit giddy. So that sort of explains the new yarn, the new designs, all of that new stuff. I've kind of covered a lot of that in the previous video, and I would recommend probably watching that one before this one because it'll make more sense. So I thought I'd just share with you a couple of new yarns I have acquired and current whip thing that's on my needles, and I did a Q&A on Instagram yesterday. I thought I'd decide when I saw the questions whether I wanted to answer them on Instagram or YouTube, and I thought I prefer kind of having a ramble. I can chat for longer on YouTube, can't I? So yeah, I've got a bit of a Q&A about some things about the new yarn, some things about designing in general, photography, a few things like that, so I shall just get on with it. Yes, actually, so first things first, I'm wearing not a new design, one from last year. This is my Livingston vest because, you know, don't want to just focus on the new ones all the time. This is a favourite from last year. This is the design that gets copied all the time and has recently been ripped off by Shein and on sale for $11.99, so woohoo. But anyway, annoyances aside, I love it. Last year's design in West Yorkshire Spinners, Blueface Leicester, Roving Aran, these big dropped, not really armholes because it just wraps around the front, but you know, wrap around waist, D-ring tie, brioche stitch. Firm favourite of mine, and I'm glad that the weather is it's finally turned into autumnal, but it's kind of rainy and windy autumnal, not that kind of crisp and nice and fresh, so that's annoying, but at least we have autumn. And Dolly is wearing my Ribblesdale vest, which is one of my new designs. It's also a brioche vest, so that seems to be a bit my thing at the minute, but I thought it'd be interesting to show you the pattern and yarn that has been the best seller so far. So everything's been out for a week now, and both at Yarndale and online, this is #1 at the minute, which is quite interesting, including the colour. So I would have thought, well, based on the poll that I did on Instagram, the pink shade, love number, 1 second. Yeah, so based on my Instagram poll, this shade was most popular, and I think that, you know, that makes sense. Like, you would pick one of the bright colours as your favourite colour, but when it's come down to actually which sold the most, this one, shade Penumbra, which I absolutely love, and I don't even really do green. So yeah, this is like my perfect dark foresty kind of, just a really rich green, and I absolutely love it, so it makes me very happy that others do too. So yeah, that's going well. I like that it's a quick project as well, so a couple of people have cast on or even finished already. The pattern's been out a week, so that's exciting. Yeah, we like a quick knit, so I think I'm going to do more vests. Vests seem to be going well. Yeah, I mean, I know I watched Ellie Skein-Deer, if you watch her YouTube channel, she mentioned about vests being a bit of a thing at the moment, and seems to be that they are. There's a lot of them on Ravelry, there's a lot of them in shops, they're just a thing, and they're quick to knit, you know, it's quicker without sleeves, they're practical, there aren't really any downsides, so I'm thinking there's going to be more vests in my future. Anyway, so I shall quickly show you my current work in progress. Camera cut off there and I'm not sure exactly what I was saying, but anyway, whip on my needles. So yeah, it might seem a little odd that I have my own yarn just come out and now I'm not currently knitting with it, but that is because I received this yarn back in July and cast on and knit half a cardigan whilst I was isolating with COVID, and then my isolation ended and my yarn arrived, so it was kind of drop everything, down tools, pick up my yarn because I had a whole cardigan and a hat and all manner of things to knit to a deadline because we were working to have everything ready to launch for Yarndale. So this just got abandoned and is sat in a bag ever since. So I picked it up now and I'm making quick progress. So yet unnamed, but this is in We Are Knitters Yarnicorn, which I'm sure you will have seen if you follow the Knitstagrammy kind of world. It's on there a lot. It's kind of their signature yarn, I guess. But yeah, I knit a whole sleeve yesterday of this sort of cardigan bomber jacket kind of thing. It looks a little bit floppy there, but yeah, I'm loving it, and it's knitting up super quick. This is the petite wool. This shade also comes in the wool, which is a super chunky, but that's a little bit chunky for my liking for this, so I went for the petite wool. I'm fairly sure I chatted about this in a couple of episodes ago. I'm completely losing track. It'll be back in like July if I was. But yeah, picked it up again now. Knit the button bands and the neckband because I hate how sweaters and cardigans look without them. They just look so unfinished, and it looks so much nicer now that this is added. Then I've done one sleeve, and I have 5 skeins. I mean, they asked me how much I wanted when I was working with them for this collaboration. I thought, I went through Ravelry and thought, right, 5 skeins is sufficient for a sweater or a garment, generic garment in my size, and hopefully it will be. I mean, it would be plenty if I made normal size sleeves, but I don't do normal size sleeves, so, should have maybe factored that in. Hopefully I won't have to ask for one more skein. But yeah, so I've weighed how much yarn I had left before beginning the sleeves, and I think it was 270 grams, including my swatches, and I now have 140 left. So it's like really cutting it fine for, in theory, I should be absolutely fine if I've weighed things correctly, if skeins are evenly sized, all of that. Who knows? I'm really hoping that I don't get to the end and run out, because I have... This is all I have for the second sleeve, and as you can see it was quite big sleeves, and that's using like every last scrap. So yarn chicken. But yeah, I knit the first sleeve in a day. Granted, I knit quite a lot knit for quite a chunk of the day, but it didn't take long. But when you're playing yarn chicken and when you're running out, you have to knit faster, don't you? You can't just dawdle along when you're running out of yarn. You've got to pick up the pace and hope that you get there. Somehow you'll use less yarn if you knit faster. There's some sort of weird psychology going on there. Yeah, in theory I should have this finished this weekend. Don't see any reason why not, unless I run out of yarn. And I know the sensible thing to do would seem like, oh well, why don't you just knit the sleeves 2 at a time and then you can keep going on both. But that is what I would do if it was any other pattern that was either someone else's pattern or my own existing pattern, where I knew what I wanted the sleeves to look like. But with this one and with others, I have my standard way of doing these sleeves that gives you a gathered, slight gathering here and this volume throughout the sleeve cap. That is like my thing. I know what I'm doing with that. And then sometimes I like to get to that point and then decide that, right, do I want it ballooning all the way down? Do I want to taper it a little bit? Just sort of, I don't know, that's why I like doing everything myself and never getting anyone to knit anything for me, because I like to be quite intuitive with it and try it on and think, this actually, I was planning on doing this, but now I think about it, this might work better, or, just make it up as I go along a bit. So 2 at a time doesn't really work in case I change my mind. Because ripping back one sleeve is annoying enough, so ripping back 2 would be really, really annoying. So, yeah. 1 at a time. It's a fun sleeve, of course. That just means I'm playing yarn chicken, so that should keep me busy. And then I think my needles will be completely empty at that point, and I'm not sure what to cast on next, because I definitely want to do some colour work in my yarn, but I'm going down to London next week, and I try to plan my projects around train journeys, because that's like 4.5 hours-ish on a train in a day, so I've got to have something portable. So maybe I'll just knit another version of my hat. I have got some baby clothes to knit at some point, because little Ada, who I made a set for a little while ago, has loved her little everything. She's worn a cardigan that I made lots, but now she's grown and she's not quite so little. So I'm thinking something in size 3 to 6 months. That might be a fun train project, or don't know, we'll have a think. But anyway, I shall just show you a couple of things that I have got from Yarndale. So yeah, Yarndale was my first time exhibiting at an event. So I didn't have a stand to myself. I was there with Emily Folds Knits, which is a shop in Colne, a yarn shop with a great range of all different yarns. A really nice shop. It's about a bit less than an hour away from me, so kind of local-ish, I guess. But yeah, Laylee very kindly let me have some space on her stand amongst various other brands. So it was really exciting. We went along to set up on Friday. It was a long weekend. It felt like a long time. Like, I don't know if it's just because I'm out of practice with being out and about and on my feet for that long, but it's standing around is worse for my back than walking around. I could walk all day and probably be fine or have achy legs, but oh my god, my back at the end of it. I was very happy to be reunited with my yoga mat and foam roller on Monday and had a really good stretch because I was stiff at the end of that. So my back and my knees felt like I was about 90 and I'm 23, so that's looking promising for me. But yeah, it was so good to meet people. I did take a couple of clips that I thought, oh, I'll do a vlog, and then I don't think I actually really did enough to make it a vlog, but I might just insert clips here anyway. Hello, just at Yarndale. Thought I'd do a little vlog. Here is my bit of the stand. Axis by Lily Kate is here. I shall show you how we get on during the day. I've never exhibited at a thing like this before. I've been to many a yarn festival, but never on this side of things. It's very exciting for me. Wearing my Ribblesdale vest there, new pattern. Don't know if it's locking on me here. People are just coming in, so I shall let you know how we get on. Show you around the stand. We have the posters, new garments, some samples here, hat down there, all the yarn, swatches, and samples of existing patterns. We have Mama Bear Yarns is my next door neighbour. Look at those beautiful hand-dyed yarns. So nice. Poison apple top would be really nice in a couple of these actually, or an Avenham cardigan. Very cute. Just about halfway through the day now. It's going well. People are buying patterns and yarns, so that's exciting. It's just lovely to chat to everyone. So thank you to anyone who came over saying they followed my Instagram or YouTube. It's lovely to actually meet people in real life. Yeah, so I'm really excited to go around. Yeah, it's kind of to see all my yarn lined up, all the samples on Dolly and a couple of friends, and having the rail of all my samples of different patterns. We did sell printed patterns, which is quite interesting actually, because obviously I've never done anything like this before, so I didn't know how well that would sell. It's kind of like, do most people just want a Ravelry or a download code for something? You know, so that they can have it in the library and it doesn't matter if they lose it. And we kind of erred on the side of caution with not printing out too many physical copies, and it turns out we could have definitely printed out more. There were definitely people asking for printed copies, and I don't know if that's just maybe people don't want the hassle of having to boot up the printer, or you think, oh well, I can just cast on when I get home if I've got the pattern with me, or people who just don't like to use the internet for whatever reason. You know, there's all different reasons, but I just thought it was quite interesting that the printed patterns were still very much in demand and we sold out of most of them, so well, that was quite interesting. I shall know for next time to print out more copies. I guess it's just like if your printer's broken it's easier, or you might just prefer that, don't know. But yeah, so I was on that stand. It was great fun. I got to meet a few people that I recognised or that I know that are my test knitters, or people from that and chat to on Instagram or on YouTube. And it was just so lovely to actually be in person and meeting people and squishing yarn. And yeah, absolutely loved it. And it was great to see sort of an in real life reaction to my yarn, because obviously it only launched just that day, which was quite a stressful week. Doing 5 pattern launches, a yarn launch and Yarndale in one weekend was possibly one too many, but we made it work in the end anyway, so it's good. And I keep looking at this yarn here because one thing I want to show you is that I had been thinking, that the one thing I wanted to look for at Yarndale was some mohair, because I thought, you know, I've got plenty yarn, I do not need to up my stash, and I'm there working, you know, not going looking for yarn for myself. I had to have something in mind. So I thought I really want to try my yarn held together with some mohair, because it's a nice worsted weight base for it. And I just mentioned this, and I'd only had a very quick wander around on Saturday. You know, I'd been on the stand most of the day, so I didn't really get a chance to look around other than saying hello to people that I knew. But I just briefly mentioned it, and then Paula, who runs Mama Bear Yarns, who was next to me on Layla's stand, in our sort of like circle of all the different brands, she turned up on Sunday saying, "Oh, I dyed you some mohair last night." And I was like, "What? You did not need to do that." Especially based on my really poor description of something kind of variegated and hand dyed but not too contrasty, and I don't really know what colour I want. That's what I'd said I was on the hunt for, and then she turned up with this. It's so pretty. I don't know if it'll show up particularly well in this light, or whether I'd be better, oh gosh, taking photos. But anyway, hopefully that's focused. It's kind of like a sea glassy green with some darker, slightly purpley dark grey. Oh, it's just lovely. So this is 6 mini skeins. I think she said it would be, comes to about 1,000 metres, so that should be plenty to hold together with my natural shade here, is what I'll probably hold that together with. So I have swatched that. Which is interesting that I don't know if I just got a lighter bit, but the dark patches haven't shown up as much as I thought, so maybe I just haven't got to that section yet, but I just swatched it held together with the natural and then 2 strands there. So I've no idea what I'm going to do with it yet, but definitely want to use that. Yeah, so thank you very much to Paula for this beautiful yarn. I can't wait to do something with it. Something maybe with some sheer panels, sheer stripes. Don't know, I love a good mohair combination. So yeah. And I knit that on a 6mm with 1 strand of my worsted weight and then 1 strand of mohair, and I think it might be a bit gappy. I think that might make for a bit of a sloppy sweater, so I might have to drop to a 5.5. Yeah, very happy with that. And then because I am predictable and all I ever seem to buy is pink fluff, I also bought a couple of skeins from the Fibre Fox of their mohair, so it'll be the same base. Everyone uses the same base, don't they? Yeah, the 72% kid mohair, 28% silk, and this is in the shade Rose Gold, because, oh gosh, my stomach's rumbling there. Apologies if you can hear that. Yeah, last time at Yarndale I bought pink fluff, 2 lots of pink fluff. I've used both of them and I just adore it. So, haven't swatched this yet, but I think I'm going to do the same, probably with this one. I feel like any of my other shades. So yeah, oh yeah, this is my yarn, by the way, if you haven't watched my other video. Lily Kate makes Axis Worsted. My pride and joy. Could swatch it with that, but I feel like that's not gonna, it's gonna mask a lot of the pink. It's gonna hide it. So probably that. But anyway, so that's 2 fluffy projects there. I'll have to have a good think about how much I have and whether that will be a sweater or a vest. Because you know we love a vest. So I've just rambled for absolutely ages without actually answering any of the questions that I was asked, so I've got them open on my phone now and I shall go through them. First question, do you have a favourite colour of your new yarn? Now, that would be obviously very, very difficult for me to choose because I love them all. If I didn't, I wouldn't have created them. But if I had to choose, it would probably be either this one, Love Number, which I love the name, I love the colour. I haven't actually knit anything in just this yet. I've done a hat in red in these 2 with 2 colour brioche, which look really cool, but I haven't done anything in just this. One of my test knitters, Marie, just finished a Ribblesdale vest here in this shade and I love it, and I think I might have to knit one. So yeah, that would probably be it, but also do I have all of them here? So I just grabbed all the colours here, and what I find is that the reason that the yellow, so shade Helio, is potentially my favourite, this is the easiest way to hold it, is that I think without it the palette looks really different. If I just take that out, yeah, there's the red and the pink, but I feel like it looks a lot flatter. You know, the blues are quite bright, but I don't know, it just, then when you put this in, I feel like it really lifts the whole palette and just makes for a much more interesting kind of, more scope for different combinations, and just lifts it and gives you the opportunity to do some more, not obscure, but slightly less obvious combinations by having the bright yellow in there. It really acts as a zinger. So, and I think Love Number and Helio. So it's interesting though, because what I would actually wear the most isn't necessarily those two, but you know, I absolutely love how this turned out actually, shade Dark Matter. But I don't think I would say, oh my god, the dark grey is my absolute favourite, but it's going to be so wearable, going to go with so much, work so well in colour work, so yeah, that is also, I love them all, that's a short answer. Do you plan on making a yarn collection in different weights and fibres? So, for the minute, no. I thought let's not jump in and do too many things at once. Maybe further down the line, because I know Fibre Fox, Jenny, I'm the third person that has this arrangement where they create a yarn. So Carol Feller has her yarn Newer, which comes in a sport and a worsted weight, and Rachel Coopy has her yarn Socks Yeah, which is in a 4-ply and a DK. So, and then I'm the third one that's now got Axis as my yarn, but they're all like produced by Fibre Fox. So the scope is there to have another weight of yarn, but I don't know whether we'll go down that route, as in, because for, say for a DK or a 4-ply, I also like working in cotton or wool, or I don't have a specific thing that I like about it, whereas with a worsted weight I really wanted a woolly worsted weight. So I don't know, basically, not for the time being, we'll see about it. But we do definitely plan to add more colours. So we started with these 12, and then hopefully it won't be too long before we can add another 4 or so, which will probably be quite a challenge to choose. I mean, just trying to think of, does it feel like the palette is missing anything? I'd be interested to hear your feedback actually, if rather than, it's easy to just say, oh I love purple, I want a purple, but then how would that work with the others? Is sort of, if you think that this palette could really do with a something, a dark red is one that I'm thinking it could maybe do with, you know, if you think there's anything missing that would help to make it more versatile, that's kind of the direction we need to go. So yes, there will be more colours, more yarn, who knows, maybe at some point. For the moment I'm just kind of focusing on this rather than getting carried away with too many new things. Someone has asked, how did you pick all these gorgeous shades for your yarn? So thank you very much. I can't remember how much of this I chatted about in my last video, but I actually started with paint swatches, which my friend recommended. It was quite handy to be able to just play around with them like that, and I found it was interesting actually, because obviously I had paint swatches from when I painted the bathroom or painted something else, just various things that I'd picked up over time when I'd been in a hardware store, to see sort of what colours do I normally gravitate to. Whether they've ended up on the wall or not is a different matter, but you know, colours that I have picked up, and there was actually one really similar to the pink that, I don't even know where they are now, I think they're in a folder somewhere, that I thought I was going to go with. So I kind of started with those, and then I wanted it to be a very me palette, which generally is fairly cool toned, but yeah, I wanted it to be useful. So how did I come up with them? I knew that if we were to have a fade of any, well not particularly a fade, but a blend of different colours, I thought the blue would be most useful. I thought if you're going to have multiple colours of anything, or multiple shades, sorry, of any one colour, blue's kind of a universal favourite. I mean, I don't think there's probably that many people that hate blue. You know, green or red or something would be a little bit more, there's more sort of, not more niche, but I don't know. I thought if you're going to have a blend of anything, blue would be the one. So we have these 4 shades, which are Parallax, Aurora, Blue Shift and Event Horizon, all in the blue there. I have an undyed natural, because I just thought, you know, there's no point messing around with changing. Sorry, the sticks in that one. I photographed them outside and dropped a couple. you know, not, it's just a classic. I didn't think there would be any point in changing that, trying to make it slightly pinky or slightly yellow or anything, just left that as it is. So this is completely undyed. And then for the neutrals, I thought it's a good idea to have a warm neutral and a cool neutral, because, you know, I think every palette needs the neutrals. So there are these two, excuse me, shades Light Cone, which is sort of warm beige, and Quiescence, so that's your cool neutral, or pale grey. And then thought you don't want all your neutrals to be really light, because a dark neutral can work brilliantly for colour work in contrast with everything. Then we have our dark grey. It's kind of a process of elimination really. So those, you know, those three are the four, that's my neutrals. So I had my blues, had my neutrals, and then I thought, definitely think we should have a green in there if we're having 12. But I'm really not a fan of sort of bright grassy greens or anything like that. I do quite like a sagey green. I absolutely love this kind of green, and I knit my Any Day vest in a similar sort of sagey colour, so maybe that would be a colour to consider for the next batch. But yeah, I thought a dark green. I've knitted a couple of things in dark green and it's so wearable, looks so good. So yeah, I went with that. My red was actually kind of difficult to decide, to figure out exactly which way to go with it, because at first I thought, oh, we'll go for quite a tomatoey red, and then when I was trying to combine that with other yarns, or other colours, it felt like it was just sort of too orangey, and there wasn't a lot of orange going on in the rest of it, so I ended up settling on, I'd say it's quite a true pillar box red kind of colour. It's not particularly pink and it's not particularly orange, it's kind of right down the middle. As for my yellow, this was one that I had in my head right from the very beginning, that we needed a Zinga colour, and a zingy yellow to liven it all up. Didn't want it to be too... it's basically a load of things I didn't want and then narrowing it down. So yeah, I wanted it to be quite bold, not too warm and mustardy, not too light and buttery. I would say it's a egg yolk colour. It's really quite vibrant, but not orangey in the way that mustard is. So yeah, that's kind of how I settled on there. I think my final one is this one, shade Love Number, which I knew I wanted it to be sort of dusky. I thought if I went for bright pink right away, that might be a little bit difficult to combine. Not to say that I won't be doing a bright pink. But yeah, I wanted a sort of dusky pink. I find this is the shade that I wear. It's sort of similar to my Lawrence sweater. I'm just looking in the mirror, it's very similar to the shade of lipstick that I wear. I thought that kind of lipsticky, dark nude lipstick sort of pink, you know, it's a shade that you put on your face, therefore it's a shade that sort of looks good with your face. And yeah, there were various weird steps of logic that went into creating the palette and a lot of changing my mind, so that's the short version anyway, and luckily I'm really happy with how all the colours came back, so we're all good. A couple of people asking for advice for new designers or starting out design. Someone's asked for advice for people wanting to start dyeing yarn, and I have never dyed yarn, so sorry. Can't really advise on that one. I would be not very well placed to do so. But for starting to design, I think I might do a whole video on this, because I could talk about it for hours, but in short I would say don't put the pressure on of thinking of designing to sell the patterns at first, because you've got to get in the groove of it kind of before you actually start anything, and that just adds unnecessary pressure. And I would say have a real think about the existing items in your wardrobe, whether they be store-bought or hand knit, and how they fit, and figure out what it is about them that makes you like the fit. Because you could say, oh, they're all drop shoulder sweaters, but like, is it a long drop here with a big deep armhole? Is it, you know, is it a fitted drop? There's lots of different things within that one style, and figuring out what it is that works for you. And I think there are some really great books, which I've got a highlight on my Instagram stories sharing my favourite books, and I think I might, yeah, I'll definitely do a video where I'll go into more detail about those. I might list a couple of the titles below. But I think what I hear a lot is, I don't know where to start. and then people sort of get in a panic. But if you just stop and break it down and think, right, I know how many stitches I have per inch, and how many rows per inch, sorry, just from your swatch. I know I want my garment to be this wide by this tall with this amount of shaping here, kind of thing, which I would definitely say either be very familiar with knitting other people's patterns or take those measurements from an existing item in your wardrobe. Then you're not just plucking numbers out of thin air. You know, if you know those, then that's kind of the starting point. And I would say if you're familiar, use a garment construction that you're familiar with. So I always work top down, say always, most of the time work top down. And I can see how you might think, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. But you think, right, so that's your shoulder width that you're using if you're starting here, setting sleeves. So you need to find the standard size charts for bodies, which there are various different ones online. Right, find what that measurement is. Do most of your sweaters have a couple of inches of ease there? If so, factor that in. And really just break it down, just thinking, right, I want to start here. This is what the bust measurement's going to be, and then it's just a case of working out the difference between. And then say you have 20 stitches that you need to increase, 2 at each end, 1 at either end, sorry, that's 10 increase rows. It's kind of, if you actually break it down, it's not as complex as you might think in parts. I mean, things like short rows can be more, I mean, once you know what you're doing, it's really simple, but it can be a bit more complicated. But I would say stick to probably a fairly boxy sweater if you're new. But yeah, I think let's just save that for a whole nother video. What came first, the yarn or the designs? So the yarn definitely came first. I didn't have specific designs in mind when we were going through the process of developing the yarn. However, it was created from the beginning as a sweater yarn, and with the knowledge that I like to create structured sleeves, often with a puff to them, so nothing too drapey. I wanted something that would blend for using colour work, or you know, like slip stitches, stripes, any form of colour work, not specifically stranded. You know, I sort of had this general framework of the sort of designs I like to do that generally involve quite a lot of structure. And then we created a yarn for that, and then in terms of coming up with the specific designs of exactly which slip stitch pattern I used for the Winkley cardigan and exactly the type of puff sleeve sweater I was going to do, like my Cadogan sweater, that came later. Well, not too much later. I kind of had all the designs firmed up by April, May? Yeah, thereabouts. And then went from there really, so yarn, but kind of hand in hand. Unrelated to knitting question of what made you choose your degree? I think it says it's such an interesting subject, it's just gone off now. So yeah, I did say this was an open Q&A, so I'm happy to chat about absolutely anything. So I'm currently studying astronomy and planetary sciences. I say currently studying, I'm between modules at the moment and my next one doesn't start until February, which is kind of a blessing that I didn't also have the beginning of a uni term to deal with at the moment. And I've just always found it fascinating really. I think my interest in astronomy started when I was either 11 or 12. At school, my science teacher pulled me aside and said, oh, we really want to push you, we think we can see potential here, you know, all that kind of thing. And I ended up doing an astronomy GCSE course. I never sat the exam just because it didn't work out timings wise and everything. I really can't remember if I've already chatted about this on here. So I never sat the exam, but I did a lot of the work leading up to it, and I just found it absolutely fascinating. It's not that I particularly go out and look at the stars all the time. I mean, I have quite low blood pressure and I get really dizzy looking up, so I'm absolutely useless at that. I just found it fascinating how much we can know about what is out there in the universe just from here. Yes, we've been to the moon, but we've not really been that far in the grand scheme of things. The moon is just down the road, really, in comparison to what we know, and I just thought I love it. I absolutely love it, and I thought I don't particularly want to be a hands-on scientist. I'm not going to be going into research, I don't think. So I thought I may as well do a subject that I find fascinating and really interesting, and rather than going into medical physics or something like that is has a more direct sort of career route to it. Yeah, just find it really interesting basically. I think there aren't that many women, unfortunately, in the industry, although that is hopefully changing, and I just thought, you know, I'm not going to let that put me off at all. I had some great teachers, some far better male physics teachers than female physics teachers in terms of how supportive they were, which is kind of odd. But yeah, started from there. When I first started my degree, I was actually doing a physics course, just physics, and then changed after about 6 weeks and thought, you know what, let's just do a more specific one that I really enjoy. So I have 1 more year left to go. Don't particularly plan to actually use it in the near future whilst my creative stuff is going well, because I really didn't want to study anything creative at university. I thought that would just take the joy out of it. It's not as fun when you have to work to exam criteria. I'd rather do my own thing, and it seems to be going well, so I think I made the right call there. But yeah, whether I'll actually use my degree directly, whether I'll go into sort of science communications, might end up using it more, might end up doing a master's, you know, who knows, maybe one day I'll do a PhD. Not on the plan right now. But yeah, just gone off on a ramble now. I'm looking forward to getting stuck into my dissertation next year, but quite thankful for the break now, because, you know, it's been exams every year since I was like 14, 15, which I know some people have it for many more years to come, but it's nice to have a bit of a break. I've done 5 years of distance learning already. 1 more to go. Next question is my favourite independent yarn dyer. So I have a few, but I haven't actually used much independently dyed yarn in the last few years, so I can kind of whittle it down to the list of ones that I have used recently or plan to use. So obviously there are these skeins of mohair that I've shown you. This from Mama Bear Yarns and this from Fibre Fox, upside down there, that I'm loving. I really like indie dyes that work sort of soft shades, and they're obviously hand dyed, but they're not like really contrasty. This amount of kind of colour but softness, it works really well for me. That said, another dyer that I love is Miriam of the Discreet Unicorn, whose yarn I use for my brightest tea, and I think it's great. I'll just insert photos rather than getting it out. It's great when someone has a really clear sense of this is their yarn. Like, I would spot her yarn a mile away, probably literally, because it's that bright. So yeah, she does a lot of neons and really bright colours, but and bright, you know, pink is the only bright that I kind of ever do, and she actually dyed one specifically for me that had that kind of more variegated. It wouldn't be a semi-solid, it was more variegated than that, but it also wouldn't be a full-on contrasty variegated, just a nice sort of blended palette that worked really well together of pinks and corals and oranges in my brightest tea. So absolutely love Miriam's yarn, and the shade Pink Lemonade that she created for me. And yeah, the other hand dyed yarn that I've used was for my Avonham cardigan, which is also pink. So there's a bit of a theme here. Yeah, that was from West Green Loft Yarns, who is another one that I love her work. They were some speckled pink shades in the merino cashmere nylon 4-ply and the mohair, because I love mohair. And I really like her kind of soft vintage palette, but it's got a little bit of unexpected splashes of dark or colour to it that I really enjoy. Do you have suppliers in France that we could buy your yarn from? At the moment of filming, I don't think we have any in France. With stockists, obviously it was kind of a rush to make sure that some places had it on the day when the yarn launched, you know, so they could sell it on the day, which they did. But it's an ongoing process to keep hopefully getting more stockists. So I think we have one definitely in Slovakia, and was it Switzerland? I don't actually deal directly with people. These all go through Jenny from Fibre Fox, so it's kind of what she feeds back to me. But yeah, we're hoping to get a lot more European suppliers, basically. Really hoping to get Germany soon. And yeah, so hopefully very soon is my answer to that. We currently have the UK, US and Australia are covered. Obviously the more shops the better, but yeah, it's available in all of those places, for now anyway. And hopefully in months to come I'll have a much longer list of stockists. But the current list is on my blog. I've made a page on my blog where I've created a map so you can find the stockists through there, so I shall link that down below. I had a couple of questions of, do any of your patterns work for a beginner, and something similar, which of your cardi and jumper patterns is easiest for a beginner to start off with? So I would say a lot of things aren't as scary as you think. That's probably not what you want to hear. But I did actually design a beginner friendly collection for Stitch and Story last year, which featured 3 garment patterns and a couple of accessories. So it's a taste of cables, a taste of lace and a taste of stripes that all gave you kind of introductions to those techniques. But they were all worked in pieces. Well, no, the vest was worked in the round as sort of an introduction to working in the round, but the others were worked in pieces with quite boxy shapes. So those were sort of my beginner-ish projects. I would say if you can knit and purl and do a decrease, you can do those. There is not a lot more to it. So yeah, those are my most beginner-friendly patterns. They're the absolute simplest. But I would say my Lawrence and sweater has a couple of times, or quite a few times actually, been knit as a first garment, and people have said that it works well as a beginner pattern. Lawrence and sweater, and in terms of cardigans, I would say mine made my day cardigan, because that's also quite boxy shape. There's really, if you can pick up stitches, which please don't be scared of, it is the most useful technique and is not scary. That's helpful. Don't be scared, it's not scary. Good one, Lily. It's just really useful. Definitely, if that's a kind of mental block that you have about picking up stitches, just practice on a swatch until you've cracked it, and you will be able to do so many things. So yeah, I have a few different YouTube tutorials on that. But yeah, picking up stitches and German short rows, or whatever form of short rows you choose, but I would recommend German short rows, are really handy techniques that will allow you to do a hell of a lot without having to introduce like fancy lace or cables or anything that looks complicated. So I'd recommend learning those techniques, Lawrence and sweater and Made My Day cardigan being the simplest. Do you knit continental or English style? How do you knit so quickly? I definitely have chatted about this in a previous video, but I can't remember which. So I have knit for about 15 years now, since I was about 8, and for 14 and a half of those I knit English style, just because that's what my mum and my nan taught me and that's what I'd always done. And I tried to learn to knit continentally because I kept hearing that it was quicker, and it was just not working for me. The kind of holding your yarn with your fingers like this, stretched out, something, I don't know, maybe I just didn't have the dexterity in my left hand to do it, but it just didn't work for me. However, now that I've figured out a way to, instead of wrapping the yarn around my fingers, I wrap it, I don't have a random piece of yarn here to show you. Yeah, I've shown this before, but instead of trying to wrap it around my fingers like you generally are suggested to, I don't know, tension it like that or something, that does not work for me at all. Now that I've figured out to wrap it around my whole palm of my hand and then just over my left finger, now I can knit continental. And my motivation for learning to do so wasn't particularly speed, because I can knit English style quite quickly. It was that I was getting a dodgy elbow. So English style, I didn't particularly think of the basic actions of sort of needle through, yarn round, forgetting how to knit now, and then pulling it through. A lot of the time when you're teaching particularly, you get this action of wrapping the right hand around, whereas what I do when knitting English style is just sort of dip. So my right hand doesn't really move, the left hand just sort of dips like that. Makes it a much smaller movement, but it meant that my left arm was basically going like this all the time in a fixed position, and I think that's what triggered my dodgy elbow. So I thought I can't afford to not be able to knit like that. Does not work for me. So I had to try something, and I found a rhythm with continental. It's kind of strange that things like 1x1 rib, I get a bit of funny roaming out business going on continental, so I knit that English style. A few different, like casting off I find easier English. I kind of flick between the two. I try to not just change within a project, like in an expansive stocking stitch, but I might knit the main body of something in continental and then the ribbing in English, which is really not orthodox of me, but hey ho. As for how I knit so fast, I don't think I knit yeah, I suppose I am quite quick. I don't look at it a lot of the time. I find I will get a lot more knitting done in a day if I have a podcast on, and I think actually someone asked what I do while I knit, so segueing into that one, I get distracted if I'm just knitting, unless it's something really complicated. I want to either be chatting to someone or have the radio on or podcasts or YouTube, you know, all of these things. I don't need to explain to you how to watch videos. Or I do actually really like reading. If it's something that's just stocking stitch or equally simple, if I get myself sort of set up right that my book is held open with my phone as a paperweight there, it's just heavy enough to keep the book open at the page and I just have to have it at the top and then move it up and down. I can knit and read at the same time, and then I look down and I'm like, oh, it's grown 2 inches in the last chapter and I didn't even notice, so that's kind of nice. But yeah, knitting without looking at it does really help. As for actual speed of the actions, it's difficult to explain really. I think continental, I find it quicker now that I keep the movements very small. I don't have my fingers like this like you see a lot of people doing. Sort of splayed out does not work for me at all. An English style, I know a lot of people have the yarn sort of over their finger and just flick like that. That's supposedly like the quickest way. I think that's like the traditional Shetland way that they knit really quickly or something. But I don't. I literally just have it running through my hand and just go like that. Just keeping the movements small though is I guess all I can suggest there. But yeah, that's how I knit as fast as I can. Try not to overdo it because then you get a dodgy arm. How many tattoos do you have? That's an easy one. This is all. Me and my mum have matching tattoos. Got it done as soon as I turned 18. It's just a little bow made of dots that we saw on Pinterest and thought it was cute. No particular meaning. I love it. Maybe I'll get more, but I'm happy with just that. It didn't hurt either, which I'm guessing is just because they just prick. There was no like dragging action. It was just quick stab. Yeah. Had that, gosh, 5 years now. Nearly 6. Getting on a bit. Favourite knit designer. I knit basically all my own patterns, so that's the kind of a difficult one, but I would say if I wasn't knitting my own patterns, if I didn't do that, the designer that I think I would make most patterns from is Fable Knits. Fable Knitwear, so Helen, I absolutely love her patterns. She loves a puff sleeve as much as I do, and I kind of nod to vintage, so I would say Helen from Fable Knitwear is my favourite designer. Are there any projects you dislike or regret? Why? No, because I don't finish them. I was trying to think about this like when I was going through the questions beforehand. If I've had a few projects that get to about 60% or even more before I finally admit to myself that they are not working, they're not what I want, something's not right about it, and I abandon it or rip it back. So I don't think anything ever gets to become a finished object that I actually don't like or regret, because it will have been ditched before then. So everything I finish I like. Would recommend that, by the way, if life's too short to keep knitting something that you really don't like. I take the same approach to books. I don't force myself to finish it just because I started it. Life's too short. I love your photos. Do you have suggestions for taking better photos? So I actually have a whole blog post on this, specifically photographing knitwear for Instagram, or for wherever, but photographing knitwear, because there are a few things that are quite specific to it. And I've done quite a bit of photography, both obviously for my own stuff. I've worked for other brands doing either social media or their campaign photography, so I think I have an idea what I'm talking about there. But I would say the number one thing that is the non-negotiable really, I won't get the camera out of the bag if I don't have natural light to work with. And I mean camera as in my SLR that I'm filming on here, or my phone. Just if the light's gone, you're really going to struggle. The only time I'd ever use artificial light is for Christmas when you've got the tree. Other than that, no. So I recognise that that's impractical, or not necessarily easy to do for a lot of people. But I would say wherever you can, make use of natural light. So that would generally mean So I take most of my photos with the window to the side of me, just kind of because that's the layout of the rooms that I work in, but also it's really good both for your face and for your clothing. So whether you're photographing a person or not, side lighting works really well for knitwear. I'll try and demonstrate here actually. So I'm stood here, the window is here sort of diagonally. If I stand flat onto the window, this is a textured stitch that should show up quite well. It looks sort of fairly flat, and then if I turn side on, you can hopefully see that there's far more contrast. You can see the stitch definition more when I turn so flat to the window, side on to the window. We get more shadow. The light's on it at the side here, then I got this shadowy panel, the actual stitch definition. It's just, side lighting works really well for knitwear, and I would say in terms of positioning yourself within a room or within a space outside, whatever, if you can get some great results with backlighting. But I quite often see people saying, oh, the sky it's blown out, it's made my my knitwear look really grainy. That's because the camera doesn't know what it's doing. You know, it's like, do I expose for the person and the knitwear, or do I expose for the sky? And you can't get both in one shot really, without using HDR, and then it looks a bit funny. So yeah, backlighting can be really effective, as in where you're stood in front of the window or the garment is placed in front of the window, the light is coming through it, if you have the ability to meter. So you have to set your camera or phone, which you can generally do just by tapping the right section of the screen on your phone, to take the light reading from the object, so that it will expose the image perfectly for the object and the background will get blown out. So you'll lose your blue sky or whatever's in the background. It will be blown out to just white really if you get it right, which can be very effective but is quite tricky to get right, but worth practicing. A couple of other tips for photographing knitwear. Even if you're not working with people at all and you just want to photograph the items, I would say try to remove as much clutter as you can from a photo. I quite often will take a shot and think, what is it that's something's just not quite right about it, and then you just crop off the edge that there was a bit of an extra wall coming in, or a bit of light on the side of the curtain or something that's just a distracting bit at the edge, and just crop that out. So whether you have to crop that post or whether you can, you know, move the irritating chair in the corner out of the way to try and sort of simplify the image. And if you're taking photos of an object, I would always say there's the obvious rule of thirds, like just try to follow that as much as possible. You can set up a grid on your screen so that you can see it. That's generally, if a photo seems a little bit off, it's probably because you've not got something on the thirds. So that's the classic tip that will always work. But yeah, for photographing an object, I would always say, just demonstrate it with the nearest yarn to hand, I would never photograph that like that. So if I'm at an angle there, and it's just sort of, it's going to make a very underwhelming image. It's coming from the perspective of where I would see it. So this is the same for an object or a person. If you photograph from sort of eye height, eye level, as where you'd see it, it makes for a very boring shot. Whereas if I tilt that down to shoot sort of flat on, that's the important thing here, it being flat on to the object, it makes a far more interesting photo. And then you can kind of go the other way. I was showing the ladies at Yarndale my favourite tip for turning my phone upside down to shoot up at things. I mean, I've got the bathroom in the background here, so this is really not a good shot, but the angle is sort of, I don't know why I'm taking them because I'm not going to show them. But yeah, I would always say if you're shooting from above, say you're doing a flat lay, don't have your iPhone at sort of this angle. You want it to be flat. If it's flat, it's flat. If it's upright, make sure it's upright, not just a bit wonky like this. That's always going to make an underwhelming shot. Well, not always, but you're going to have more reliable results of getting an impressive shot of your yarn, your swatch, your sweater, whatever. If you are, say you're taking a photo of it hanging up on the wardrobe, your phone is flat onto it, not just sort of like this. So that's my main tip there. Are there any knitting techniques you've never learned? And then I can't see the rest of it. The timer went off and I had to just take screenshots. Knitting techniques I've never learned. There are a couple actually. I've never steeked. I think I'm going to have to get a grip and just do that soon. It's not that I'm scared, I've just never particularly had the need to, and it's one of those techniques I've put off. So I've never steeped, and something else that I really want to do soon is entrelac. So I'm looking forward to having some fun playing around with those, because, you know, if I want to do some colour work, I want to do some different swaps, different directional knitting, we'll have to just have a go at those. Yeah, there's plenty of other things that I haven't done. I'm trying to think of any kind of big categories off the top of my head. I've done cables, done lace, done colour work, done brioche, done probably most things. Not done much with like nups or beads and that would often come on a shawl, just because it's not particularly my taste. Done baubles. I think in my 15 years I've covered a lot of things. So yeah, but I like knitting fairly simple things. So going all out with techniques isn't particularly my cup of tea anyway. I think that's all the questions for now, so I have no idea how long this video is going to have been. Far too long probably, it'll take me an absolute age to upload. Yeah, it's been fun to chat. I could keep going for hours, as I'm sure you can imagine. So that was just a quick question thing from Instagram, but if you have any other questions that you'd like me to answer about knitting, designing, life in general, developing a yarn line, all of that kind of stuff, leave them below and I will happily do many more videos like this, chatting away. And yeah, so I'm now going to go and edit this video and knit my second sleeve and hope I win at Yarn Chicken. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye!